In the early hours of March 8, 1968, Soviet submarine K-129 vanished in the North Pacific, taking with it 98 crew members, 3 SS-N-5 Serb nuclear ballistic missiles, and the operational secrets of the Soviet Navy's strategic missile fleet. The Golf II-class vessel, NATO designation for Project 629A, had departed from RHYOLITE Naval Base on the Kamchatka Peninsula on a routine patrol mission toward what the Soviets called the Hawaiian Station, a strategic holding position in the North Pacific within missile range of targets on Oahu. At 23:59 hours that day, communications ceased abruptly. No distress signal was transmitted. No survivors would be found. K-129, measuring 100 meters in length, displacing 2,743 tons, submerged with capacity for 70 days of autonomous operation, simply disappeared from Soviet radio frequencies as if it had never existed. The Soviet search mobilized dozens of surface ships, submarines, and maritime patrol aircraft for weeks. Sonar sweeps covered thousands of square kilometers of the Pacific, but the ocean floor in that region descended to depths exceeding 4,900 meters, where pressure reached 500 atmospheres and darkness was absolute. After months of fruitless search operations, Moscow declared K-129 lost in action. Soviet leadership believed their secrets were safe, buried beneath nearly 5 kilometers of salt water, beyond the reach of any known recovery technology. The conviction was strategic. No power on Earth possessed the technical means to descend to such depths, locate specific wreckage on the ocean floor, and more absurdly, lift 1,750 tons of twisted metal back to the surface. The seafloor was the world's most secure vault. Communication codes, missile manuals, nuclear warheads, encryption systems, and operational documents would remain inaccessible forever. This certainty allowed the Soviet Navy to continue using the same communication procedures, the same radio frequencies, and the same cipher systems that K-129 carried when it sank. What the Soviets did not know was that the United States had detected the sinking. In March 1968, the SOSUS underwater hydrophone network, sound surveillance system installed by the United States Navy on the Pacific Ocean floor since the 1950s to monitor Soviet submarine movements, registered a significant acoustic anomaly on March 8 at 23:59 Moscow time. The sound signature corresponded to an internal explosion followed by the structural collapse of a pressurized hull descending in free fall. Triangulating data from multiple SOSUS stations, Navy analysts determined an approximate search area of 1,200 nautical miles northwest of Hawaii. For months, the research submarine USS Halibut, equipped with side-scan sonar and deepwater cameras, methodically traversed the ocean floor. In August 1968, 5 months after the sinking, Halibut located K-129's wreckage at 4,900 meters depth, at coordinates that remained classified until the 1990s. Underwater photographs revealed the hull broken into sections, the conning tower twisted, and crucially missile tubes visible on the aft sail deck. American intelligence had just discovered the greatest espionage prize of the Cold War, an intact Soviet ballistic missile submarine carrying nuclear weapon systems, operational codes, and technology that Moscow considered lost forever. The question now was whether recovery would be possible. The depth of 4,900 meters exceeded any maritime salvage operation ever conducted in history. The previous record, established in 1966, had been the recovery of a hydrogen bomb lost off the Spanish coast at only 870 meters depth. No conventional steel cable could support the weight of 1,750 tons, plus the additional tension of nearly 5 kilometers of suspended cable. No existing surface vessel possessed cranes, dynamic stability, or positioning systems capable of remaining absolutely stationary over a specific ocean point, while conducting a precision lifting operation of millimetric accuracy. And all of this would have to be accomplished in total secrecy, under the eyes of Soviet patrol ships that regularly crossed the North Pacific. The CIA, recognizing the opportunity to obtain information about Soviet strategic capabilities and nuclear missile codes, assumed leadership of the recovery operation. In 1969, CIA Director Richard Helms presented the concept to President Richard Nixon, who personally authorized the project. The codename was established, Project AZORIAN. The initial budget was estimated at $350 million, equivalent to approximately $2.8 billion in 2025 values. It would be the most expensive and technically ambitious intelligence operation ever conducted by the United States to that date. The engineering solution would be revolutionary. The CIA contracted Global Marine Development, an offshore drilling company, and Lockheed Missiles and Space Company to develop an unprecedented submarine recovery system. The concept was audacious. Construct a gigantic surface vessel with a moon pool, a 60-meter vertical opening in the center of the hull through which a hydraulic mechanical claw would descend to the ocean floor. The claw, christened the capture vehicle, would have the form of a dome with articulated fingers capable of enveloping and holding the Soviet submarine. Once secured, K-129 would be slowly hoisted through the moon pool and deposited inside the ship's hull, completely hidden from external observers. To maintain operational secrecy, the CIA needed a convincing cover story. Here entered Howard Hughes, the reclusive billionaire whose eccentric ventures and futuristic technological projects were already legendary. Hughes and his Hughes Tool Company agreed to lend their name and credibility to the project. The official story would be that Hughes was building the world's most advanced deep-sea mining vessel, destined to collect manganese nodules from the ocean floor, minerals rich in rare metals whose commercial exploitation had been discussed since the 1960s. Manganese nodule mining was plausible, scientifically valid, economically interesting, and conveniently required exactly the type of technology needed to recover a submarine: precise dynamic positioning, extreme depth cranes, and deepwater operation capability. Construction of the Hughes Glomar Explorer began in 1970 at Sun Shipbuilding and Drydock Company in Chester, Pennsylvania, on the banks of the Delaware River. The ship was designed from scratch to fulfill a single clandestine mission. Its specifications were impressive: 188.6 meters length, 35.3 meters beam, maximum displacement of 50,500 tons, and a theoretical drilling capacity to 9,144 meters depth. The central moon pool measured 61 meters length by 23 meters width, large enough to accommodate the entire K-129. Above the moon pool, a 72-meter-high drilling derrick housed the hoisting systems. The dynamic positioning system, developed by Honeywell, used bow and stern thrusters controlled by computer to maintain the ship stationary with precision of several meters, even under winds up to 100 knots and intense ocean currents. The capture vehicle, the mechanical claw, weighed 2,000 tons and was a marvel of hydraulic engineering. Designed by Lockheed, it measured 36.6 meters length and possessed articulated arms actuated by high-pressure hydraulic cylinders. The claw's fingers would extend under K-129's hull, embracing it from below before beginning the lift. The entire system was tested in water tank simulations and scale models, but the actual operation would be the first attempt at operational depth. On June 20, 1974, the Hughes Glomar Explorer departed Long Beach, California, bound for the North Pacific. Aboard were 178 crew members, including CIA engineers, hydraulic systems technicians, sonar operators, saturation divers, and an intelligence team responsible for cataloging and analyzing any recovered material. The ship sailed for weeks until reaching the wreck coordinates in July 1974. Two Soviet ships, a salvage tug and a Primorai-class intelligence collection vessel, appeared shortly after the Glomar's arrival. Throughout the entire operation, the Soviets would remain less than 500 meters away, observing through binoculars, photographing, transmitting reports to Moscow. The manganese nodule mining cover story was maintained meticulously. Deck crew simulated drilling operations, mineral collection equipment remained visible, and radio communications described geological procedures. Meanwhile, below the surface, hidden in the closed moon pool, the capture vehicle was being prepared for descent. On August 1, 1974, the recovery operation began. The capture vehicle was slowly lowered through the moon pool, descending at a rate of 30 meters per minute. Nearly 6 hours were required to reach the ocean floor at 4,900 meters depth. Video cameras mounted on the claw transmitted black and white images to monitors in the Glomar's control center. K-129's wreckage appeared on screens. The broken hull, the collapsed conning tower, exposed missile tubes, marine algae covering metal surfaces, sediment accumulated after 6 years on the sea floor. Using fine positioning thrusters, operators guided the capture vehicle until positioning it precisely over the submarine's central section. Hydraulic arms extended, articulated fingers descended under the Soviet hull, and hydraulic cylinders began closing, enveloping K-129 in a steel embrace. For hours, technicians adjusted hydraulic pressures, verified tension sensors, confirmed the claw was secure. At 03:27 on August 8, 1974, 6 years and 5 months after the sinking, the Hughes Glomar Explorer began hoisting the Soviet submarine. The lift was agonizingly slow. The ascent rate was limited to 9 meters per hour to avoid excessive structural stresses on both the capture vehicle and K-129 itself, whose hull was already weakened by 6 years of corrosion and the internal explosion that sank it. Engineers constantly monitored stress sensors, hydraulic torque meters, underwater cameras. For 12 days, the Glomar remained motionless over the recovery point, maintaining position dynamically while the submarine rose centimeter by centimeter. The Soviet ships remained nearby but had no idea what was occurring beneath the surface. On August 7th, when the capture vehicle was at approximately 2,400 meters depth, tension sensors detected a critical anomaly. K-129's hull, fragile from the original explosion and prolonged corrosion, began cracking under the claw's pressure. At 09:14 on August 8th, the submarine's aft section broke away. Approximately two-thirds of K-129, including the missile tubes with SS-N-5 Serb nuclear warheads and the torpedo room with its additional nuclear weapons, fell back to the ocean floor. Engineers watched helplessly as months of planning and millions of dollars disappeared into the depths, but one-third of the submarine remained secured in the claw. K-129's forward section, including the conning tower, crew compartments, radio room, and navigation controls, stayed intact. The CIA decided to continue. At 1743 on August 8, 1974, the capture vehicle emerged through the Hughes Glomar Explorer's moon pool, bringing with it the 610-ton forward section of K-129. Steel doors closed the moon pool, isolating the hull interior from external observers. The patrolling Soviet ships saw nothing beyond a mining vessel completing another day of drilling operations. Inside the Glomar, intelligence teams wearing radiation protection suits began cataloging the Soviet submarine's contents. They found the bodies of 6 crew members in the tower compartment, preserved by cold water and high pressure. They recovered operational manuals, code books, communication equipment, navigation systems, conventional torpedoes, personal documents, ship's logs. Each item was photographed, catalogued, sent for analysis to Langley. On August 9th, the Hughes Glomar Explorer departed for Hawaii, carrying its nuclear secret inside the hull. The CIA conducted a formal maritime funeral for the 6 recovered Soviet crew members, recorded on video and later delivered to Russian President Boris Yeltsin in 1993. The bodies were wrapped in the Soviet flag, placed in weighted sealed bags, and returned to the sea while an American officer read a statement in Russian acknowledging the sailors' sacrifice. The gesture, kept secret for nearly 2 decades, would be one of the few humanitarian concessions in a purely strategic intelligence operation. The recovered materials provided the United States with an unprecedented view of Soviet ballistic missile submarine operational capabilities from the 1960s. Communication codes allowed the NSA to decipher Soviet transmissions retroactively to 1968. Missile manuals revealed technical specifications of SS-N-5 Serb systems, including operational range of 1,390 kilometers, 1 megaton thermonuclear warheads, and launch procedures. Navigation equipment showed planned patrol routes for Soviet submarines in the Pacific. Operational documents detailed communication protocols, emergency procedures, evasion tactics against American anti-submarine hunters. The operation remained absolutely secret until February 1975, when investigative journalist Seymour Hersh of the Los Angeles Times published a report revealing that the CIA had recovered part of a Soviet submarine lost in 1968. The leak source was never officially confirmed, but speculation suggested it came from within the American administration itself, possibly linked to congressional investigations of CIA abuses following the Watergate scandal. On March 18, 1975, CIA Director William Colby formally requested major American newspapers, including the New York Times, Washington Post, and Los Angeles Times, not to publish additional details about Project AZORIAN, arguing that disclosure would compromise ongoing intelligence operations and endanger American lives. Most temporarily agreed, but in June 1975, Jack Anderson, a syndicated columnist, published complete operation details in his national column, including the ship's name, operation location, and recovery system descriptions. The secret was finished. The Soviet reaction was shock and strategic humiliation. Until public disclosure, Moscow had no idea the United States had located and recovered part of K-129. In June 1975, the Soviet Navy sent salvage ship SB-10 to the wreck area, accompanied by 2 escort vessels. For weeks, Soviet divers inspected the site, confirming the submarine's forward section had been removed. A report prepared by a panel of Russian experts in June 1993 for President Boris Yeltsin, based on Russian intelligence service information, concluded the CIA had recovered at least 2 nuclear torpedoes from K-129's forward section, plus communication codes and classified operational documents. The report estimated that plutonium radiation levels detected by the CIA team on the recovered submarine indicated the presence of nuclear warheads. The discovery that Americans possessed technology to recover objects from depths exceeding 4,900 meters radically transformed Soviet understanding of ocean security. What Moscow considered an inaccessible grave proved to be a recoverable target. The strategic consequences of Project AZORIAN extended far beyond the immediate intelligence obtained from K-129. The Soviet Navy was forced to reevaluate all operational security protocols for ballistic missile submarines. Communication codes were changed across the entire fleet, radio frequencies were modified, encryption procedures were rewritten. Submarines operating in the Pacific received orders to change patrol routes, avoid areas where the ocean floor exceeded certain depths, and immediately destroy all classified documents in case of structural emergency. Soviet confidence that the deep ocean would provide absolute protection against American espionage was irreversibly shaken. CIA documents declassified in 2010 revealed the agency seriously considered a second recovery mission to collect K-129's aft section, which contained the nuclear missiles. Planning advanced until 1976, but was cancelled after Project AZORIAN's public disclosure made maintaining operational secrecy impossible. The Soviet government, now aware of the wreckage's exact location and American capability to reach it, sent permanent guard ships to the area. Any additional recovery attempt would be immediately detected and probably militarily blocked. The Hughes Glomar Explorer had a peculiar fate after its secret mission. Officially transferred to the United States Navy in 1976, the ship spent nearly 2 decades stored in Suisun Bay, California, while the government decided what to do with it. In 1997, Global Marine Company acquired the Glomar and converted it into a commercial drilling ship for deepwater oil exploration. The conversion cost $180 million and included installation of a modern drilling derrick, updated dynamic positioning systems, and 11 thrusters with combined capacity of 35,200 horsepower. Renamed GSF Explorer in 2001, the ship operated in offshore oil fields in Nigeria, Angola, Black Sea, Indonesia, Malta, and Malaysia until 2015, when it was finally decommissioned and dismantled. During its 17 years of commercial operation, the CIA's former spy ship drilled some of the world's deepest oil wells, including operations at more than 3,000 meters water depth, proving that technology developed for a secret intelligence mission had real and valuable commercial applications. Project AZORIAN established technological precedents that transformed ocean engineering. The dynamic positioning system developed for the Hughes Glomar Explorer became the standard for modern offshore drilling vessels, enabling oil and gas exploration in increasingly deeper waters. Submarine recovery techniques created for the operation were adapted for civilian salvage operations, including recovery of aircraft wreckage, sunken ships, and submarine equipment. The hydraulic mechanical claw capture vehicle inspired development of remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, that today are routinely used for submarine pipeline maintenance, ocean telecommunications cable inspection, and deepwater exploration. Private companies like Oceaneering International and Subsea 7 adopted variations of the claw technology for submarine construction operations and equipment recovery in offshore oil fields. Project AZORIAN's most enduring lesson was not technical but strategic. No secret was absolutely safe, no matter how deep it was buried, how far it was hidden, or how impossible its recovery seemed. The CIA kept most details about the exact content recovered from K-129 classified for more than 35 years. In 2010, the agency declassified a 50-page article titled Project AZORIAN, the story of the Hughes Glomar Explorer, originally published in the fall 1985 edition of Studies in Intelligence, the CIA's internal journal. The document confirmed the operation recovered the submarine's forward section but redacted extensive sections related to specific intelligence obtained. Analysts estimate the recovered communication codes and operational documents provided the United States with a significant electronic intelligence advantage over the Soviet submarine fleet for at least a decade after 1974. The NSA used the codes to decipher archived Soviet transmissions since 1968, revealing fleet movements, operational orders, and strategic communications that had been intercepted but remained incomprehensible until then. This retroactive decryption allowed American analysts to reconstruct Soviet operational patterns, identify individual submarine fleets, map patrol routes, and anticipate future naval tactics. In years following Project AZORIAN, the Soviet Union dramatically intensified its submarine protection efforts and communications security. The Project 667 Delta-class ballistic submarine series, which began entering service in 1972, was equipped with self-destruct systems designed to detonate internal explosives and destroy classified equipment if the submarine was compromised. New protocols required submarine commanders to activate these self-destruct systems immediately before any predicted catastrophic event. Submarines from the 1980s included prepositioned explosive charges in communication compartments, missile control rooms, and navigation centers, capable of being detonated remotely or by automatic timers. Soviet doctrine came to presume that any lost submarine could be located and recovered by the Americans, and therefore all submarines should be designed under the premise that their secrets would eventually be compromised. Communication codes began changing monthly instead of annually. Radio frequencies were rotated weekly. Encryption procedures became based on one-time pad systems, impossible to decipher without the corresponding physical key. The operation also created a lasting term in American legal and intelligence vocabulary, the Glomar response. In 1976, journalist Harriet Ann Phillips filed a Freedom of Information Act request asking for all CIA records related to the Hughes Glomar Explorer. The CIA responded that it could neither confirm nor deny the existence of such records, arguing that even confirming it possessed documents would reveal details about a classified operation. A federal court accepted the argument, establishing legal precedent. Since then, United States government agencies have routinely used the Glomar response to refuse information requests about sensitive operations without confirming or denying their existence. The phrase became synonymous with plausible deniability and state secrecy. The term was applied to dozens of subsequent cases involving information requests about intelligence operations, classified military missions, surveillance programs, and covert actions. In 2014, the CIA issued a Glomar response in response to requests about the armed drone program, refusing to confirm or deny the existence of records related to airstrikes in Pakistan and Yemen. The discovery that the United States possessed deepwater recovery capability also influenced international negotiations on the Seabed Treaty, which entered into force in 1972, prohibiting placement of nuclear weapons on the ocean floor. Soviet diplomats, initially skeptical about any nation's capacity to monitor compliance at such depths, became much more favorable to the treaty after Project AZORIAN demonstrated that deep seabed access technology was viable. The operation also accelerated discussions in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea related to recovery of sunken ships and ownership of submerged objects. The Soviet Union argued that military wrecks remained sovereign property of their nations of origin regardless of depth or location, and that any unauthorized recovery constituted sovereignty violation. The United States counter-argued that objects in international waters beyond certain depths were considered abandoned and subject to recovery by any nation with technical capability to reach them. The debate continues today, with implications for submarine archaeology, nautical treasure recovery, and commercial salvage operations. In terms of human intelligence, the operation demonstrated the extent of American technical capabilities in a way no leak or report could equal. Soviet intelligence officers were forced to fundamentally reevaluate their assumptions about what Americans were capable of accomplishing. If the CIA could secretly construct a 188-meter ship, develop a 2,000-ton mechanical claw, descend 4,900 meters under Soviet surveillance, and recover a submarine without immediate detection, what other technically impossible operations might be underway? The resulting paranoia led Moscow to overestimate American capabilities in diverse fields, diverting resources to countermeasure programs against threats that in many cases did not exist. Billions of rubles were spent developing self-destruct systems, enhanced security protocols, and deep salvage technologies the USSR did not need. The simple demonstration of American technical capability became a psychological weapon, forcing the Soviets to spend defensive resources on multiple fronts simultaneously. In the long term, Project AZORIAN represented a strategic victory even if technically incomplete. The CIA recovered only one-third of the planned submarine. The nuclear missiles, the most valuable prize, fell back to the ocean floor. The costs of $350 million were extraordinary for the era. But the operation achieved strategic objectives that transcended the material intelligence recovered. It demonstrated American technological supremacy in a domain the Soviets considered inaccessible. It forced costly revisions of Soviet security doctrines. It provided years of advantage in communications intelligence. And it established technological precedents that benefited civilian industries for decades. The message sent to Moscow was unequivocal. There were no safe places, no inaccessible depths, no permanent secrets. Soviet arrogance in trusting that 4,900 meters of salt water would protect their secrets was dismantled by American engineering, CIA determination, and the audacity of an operation that redefined the limits of the possible. K-129 lay on the Pacific floor believing itself eternally protected. The Hughes Glomar Explorer proved that trust in the abyss was just another Cold War illusion waiting to be shattered by the reality of Western technological superiority.